This island doesn't pump oil, mine gold, or print money, yet it powers your entire digital life. The screen you're watching, the car that navigates by itself, the servers training AI, the medical devices keeping people alive, nearly all rely on chips that begin their journey here. If this island slows down, tech slows down, launches slip, prices creep up, and production lines from Detroit to Shenzhen start idling. The reason is brutally simple. The smallest, fastest chips are incredibly hard to make, and the world clustered that difficulty in one place because it was the only place that could do it at scale, on time, again and again. Over decades, the chip industry split its brain and its hands. Many companies design brilliant chips. Very few can manufacture them at the tiniest feature sizes. On this island, fabs learned to etch structures measured in atoms and to do it repeatably with yields that make the economics work. That reliability attracted more customers, which attracted more suppliers, which attracted more talent. Every generation of investment tightened the loop. Cleaner clean rooms, steadier power, purer gases, stricter process control. The result isn't just a factory, it's an ecosystem tuned like a concert violin, precise, temperamental, and capable of feats nobody else can consistently perform. Try to copy it, and you discover the moat is invisible. You can buy the same lithography tools, the same deposition equipment, the same filters and gauges, and still fall short. Performance hides in 1,000 little recipes. The exact wafer temperature ramp, the humidity that keeps a photoresist stable, the sequence a technician uses to reset a chamber after a glitch. It lives in people who can hear a vacuum pump off by a hair, in suppliers who deliver chemicals so pure that a few stray molecules would kill $1 million batch, in engineers who feel a process drift before the data confirms it. That tacit knowledge is the difference between a machine that runs and a factory that prints miracles. This is why concentration risk isn't abstract. It's layered into the supply chain. The world's most advanced lithography systems come from a tiny group of companies. Specialty gases and chemicals are produced by a handful of ultra-precise suppliers. Photomasks and reticles require almost perfect tolerances. Even the floors under the clean rooms are designed to swallow vibration, because a wavering line at the nanometer scale means a dead chip. When any link stumbles, an earthquake, a power blip, a contamination event, a shipment caught in customs, output dips, and lead times stretch from weeks to months. Allocation starts. Customers triage. Older parts may be fine, but the cutting-edge nodes that drive AI, graphics, and premium phones become the bottleneck that slows the rest of the economy. Couldn't we just move the work? Capacity is being built in other regions, but reality is stubborn. A leading-edge fab takes years to permit, construct, equip, and, most importantly, tune. You can write a check for buildings and tools. You can't buy yields. You need thousands of trained engineers and technicians, a local web of suppliers for every valve and filter, and the patience to learn through failure. That's why just diversify often reads like a slogan. Diversification is possible and necessary, but it arrives on a calendar, not a headline. So what does resilience actually look like? First, not every chip needs the newest node. Moving suitable designs to mature processes adds shock absorbers to the system. Second, qualifying a second source in a different geography is expensive, but cheaper than a global shutdown. Third, inventory buffers, especially for brittle components, are a form of insurance we pay invisibly at checkout. Fourth, design for flexibility. Modular boards, interchangeable controllers, and power envelopes that tolerate substitutes keep assembly lines moving when a single part runs short. Finally, expand the back end. As devices stitch multiple dies into advanced packages, the bottleneck has shifted toward packaging and test. Scaling that capacity matters as much as adding new fabs. AI raises the stakes. Training accelerators and the memory that feeds them devour fab time and specialized packaging. One hyperscale order can soak up months of output. If the same island remains the primary source for the most advanced logic, it becomes the fulcrum for both consumer tech and the cloud infrastructure running modern software. Demand arrives in lumpy waves. Planning gets harder. The temptation to centralize in the most reliable ecosystem increases. Exactly the behavior that magnifies risk when something goes wrong. In the end, this is a choice between pure efficiency and durable progress. For decades, we optimized for the lowest cost per transistor and the fastest cadence of new nodes. Resilience asks us to give up a little of that, to pay for redundancy, hold some extra inventory, and build in more than one country. It is not cheap, but the alternative is paying unpredictably through shortages, delays, and missed opportunities when a single point of failure reminds us that physics and geography still rule. This island's fabs are run by people whose daily work is taming chaos at the atomic scale. Their competence is why the world could lean so heavily on them for so long. But competence isn't invincibility. A system tuned to perfection has very little slack, and the modern world now runs on that slack. If the island slows, tech slows. If it pauses, progress pauses. Building resilience won't happen overnight, and it won't be perfect. It will be messy, incremental, and sometimes frustrating. But it is necessary, because the future shouldn't hinge on a single patch of land, no matter how extreme extraordinary its factories are.